pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So one of the things I want to do next year.
All right. Welcome to Ian Brown, who's here taping us for the first time. So we have Ian in replacement for Christian. Is it just for tonight or for evermore? Okay, great. All right, Lorraine, if you could go ahead and call the roll.
Linda Avanzado. Here. John Biscardin.
Here.
Larry Cerisi.
Here.
Cheryl Clarkin. Here. Robert Jones.
Here.
William Mudge.
Here.
Kimberly Page.
Here.
Julia Held. Thank you.
And Lorraine, if you go ahead and do the calendars.
May 15th, 4 p.m., Facilities Subcommittee meeting, Central Administration Building. May 26th, Memorial Day, schools and offices closed. May 27th, 7 p.m., School Committee Business Meeting, North Kingstown High School Cafeteria. June 3rd, 6 p.m., School Committee Planning Meeting, Central Administration Building, tentatively. June 4th, 8:30 a.m., Policy Subcommittee Meeting, Central Administration Building. And June 6th, 6 p.m., North Kingstown High School graduation at Ryan Center, URI. Thank you.
So I'll just remind everyone that we do have a tentative meeting on the 3rd, so if people could please give Lorraine if you were available for that date or not, so that we can decide as to when we're going to schedule our goal planning session, because if that's available to the majority of the committee, we would like to set the date as soon as possible. So
We do have 4 people who have replied. So we do have 4.
We do have a quorum, but it would be nice to hear from everybody to know if it's only 4 or if we if it's more than 4. So, okay, great. All right, so we have a presentation.
Yes.
So, everybody come on up here for the presentation.
Well, good evening, everybody. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce to you Jacob Gagnon. Jacob is a 5th grade student at Quidnesset Elementary School, and this year he has won a poster contest in conjunction with a program called Tar Wars, and that is a program of smoking cessation by the Rhode Island Medical Society. And this year Dr. Douglas Blake came to Quidnesset to talk to the students about smoking and peer pressure and things like that associated with. And there was a contest involved in which they would make a poster about the problems of smoking. And you want to tell the crowd what happened with that contest and what you put on your poster?
Sure. Well, I won Quidnesset's poster contest, and so this is my poster. At the top it says, because you probably can't see, stand up to smoking, and on the bottom it says, choose to breathe, be tobacco free. And after I got the slogan thing, I just had to come up with an idea for the poster, and I didn't really know what to do at first. But then I just got an idea to draw trees and plants which resemble the life, and then there is a person in the middle that's just all dull and gray, and they resemble someone that has smoked, and just seeing the life around them. So, yeah.
So congratulations, Jacob. And for those of you who don't know, Jacob also played a mean Captain Hook, and I mean mean when I say that, in Peter Pan at Quidnesset. So congratulations again. Good for you. So walk down the line, shake everybody's hand.
I know we did receive the Science Olympiad results, and I was just trying to pull them up now. For 2014, for Wickford, and they asked me to read off those names, but did you have anything else that you wanted to announce under any sort of presentations or anything, Dr. Ajay?
Well, I just would like to point out before we move on a couple of words of congratulations. I think most people in the district know, because we made a lot of noise about it last week, that last week the announcement came out that Ed Ferrario, principal of Stony Lane Elementary, was named Rhode Island Principal of the Year for elementary level. So congratulations to him. We're going to have Mr. Ferrario at our next meeting to make a presentation about that. And the news is very good from NEASC for the high school NEASC accreditation visit, and we're going to have a lot of information and a presentation from Dr. Kenworthy at our next meeting on that as well. So looking forward to that meeting to go through the details on both of those.
So the students at Wickford who went in the Science Olympiad up at Rhode Island College, the Wickford team came in 4th place overall, and their team members included Tyler Chin, Harry Dewhurst, Maddie Holden, Connor Lalonde, Caitlin Sutton, Nate Verde, Sarah Burgoyne, Mitchell Butterball, Megan Fry, Colin LaRue, Stephen Sullivan, Tyler Sutton, Meredith Thibodeau, Rowan Westall, and Sophie Willem. And then they had their alternate of Aiden DeMaria. So congratulations to them. Great. That brings us to citizens' comments, and we have a number of people who have signed up here. So what I'll do is I'll read off the first name, and then I'll tell everybody who the second name is so that you can be prepared to come up. We would ask that citizens' comments be restricted to 3 minutes, and we're very happy to have you. So make sure you say your name and your address. And the first person is Casey Barber, and the second one is Victoria Remsen.
Hi, I'm Rachel Thompson, address 251 Rollingwood Drive. Don't know if I need to state that or not, but
That's fine.
Cassie Barber, 71 Wampanoag Circle.
You can tell us your name, and are you all going to speak together?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Victoria Remsen, 130 Scenic Drive.
Molly Kilday, 50 Georgia Avenue.
Carrie Sullivan, 41 Azalea Court.
So good evening, and thank you for taking this time to listen to our presentation that we've created. In our civics class, we've been talking a lot about sidewalks on Annaquatucket and the need for these sidewalks, because there is a little part of a sidewalk, but we've really been talking about the dangers that not having a sidewalks on this road has created, and the fact that there's so many kids who come in and out of the school all day. I mean, I've walked the road many times, and it's really dangerous. It's uncomfortable to be walking that road, and we're trying to get the word out that having sidewalks could really benefit the school and the school community. So on the first page, there's been 16 pages of police calls to Annaquatucket since April 2012, including 60 UIs, one at 2:44 p.m., which is a critical time in our school day where kids are staying after school for activities, which most of them maybe don't drive, maybe do drive, and are walking that road. So that's just another dangerous element added to that road at that time. If you turn to the next page, it just states that there's only one part of a sidewalk. There's no sidewalks on the right side of the road, and on the left side of the road at the very tip coming into the school, there's a little piece of a sidewalk. and there's trees, mailboxes, poles, and fences causing people to walk into the road. So when you're walking on this road, it's not like there's a little section where you can walk, but you're pushed even further onto the road because of all these things that create that. So.
On the road, there's also many trees and mailboxes from people's houses and fences, causing people to walk in the road, and there's no place for pedestrians to walk. Also on recycling day, and when the recycling bins are in the street, it makes it even harder for people to walk in the street. And then when bad weather comes, it brings obstacles to the pedestrians, like when it rains, puddles go into the road, making it harder for people to walk. And also the snow blocks in the road, making it even more narrow than it already is. And it just makes it harder to drive than it already is because the road is already so narrow.
At 6:45 in the morning, that's when traffic is really bad and the sun is just coming up, so there's a huge glare. I know at the beginning of Aniquotucket Road, towards Jitters, there's a huge corner that you need to turn. There's also a mailbox right on that corner. The sun glare is hitting right there, and if someone was walking there and a car was turning really fast, it could be really dangerous. And as you can see in the first box, the third picture, the sun is really bad, and I can't even really see the road from that picture, so I think it's very dangerous.
If you look at the top left picture on page number 5, you can see that there's a sign behind a mailbox, but if you're driving, you really can't see it. It's not very visible. So we were thinking that if we also added more signs on the road, just so cars and also bicyclists and people can just share the road together. Also adding more school zone signs and the 10-mile-per-hour school zone ahead, or motorists shall give 3-foot clearance, just so there's enough room. Also bicyclists, no more than 2 abreast, and another school sign.
As you can see on the last page and on the last slide, it's a very easy fix. And we know that you guys wouldn't be giving the money to do this project, but all we're asking of you is to write a letter of endorsement to the town council saying that we should have sidewalks and that you agree with what we're saying. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment, please, Madam Chair?
I would prefer that any
Just
comments
one
that you
quick-
make would be to the students themselves, and as I said,
It'll only take a minute.
you're more than free to go and talk to them during Democracy Night on the 7th, and I think that would be...
I think while they came here,
But
you
we're
know,
not going to take any comments
I
on
would like to
citizens'
advise
comments
them
on a whole right now,
on
Mr.
an
Mudge.
approach they could take here.
Mr. Mudge, I've asked that we not take any comments right now on citizens' comments.
Well, let me advise you
Citizens'
that
time
you
to
can
comment.
go to the Department of Ed and have them come down and evaluate this with the police. That's the first part of looking at the
Mudge,
safety
I've
issue.
asked you not
Okay?
to make any comments during citizens' comments.
Why wouldn't you let me do that?
Because it's the citizens' turn to have us listen.
Yeah, and I think we ought to impart any information that we have back to
And
those
you may do that on a
students.
one-on-one basis.
I don't think so.
Thank you very much. We also have Mr. Avedisian has stated that he would like to speak, and after him, Shelley McDonald. McDonald.
Hi, good evening. Dave Avedisian, history teacher here at the high school. I know tonight on tonight's agenda is a grading policy discussion that you may or may not get to. It seems like there's so much on the agenda tonight. I don't know if you're going to get to it, but it's still a lot of discussion at the high school, and I feel that you should be aware of it going forward. Just in the past 24 hours, we've collected over 108 signatures of teachers here at the high school who do not agree with the proposed grading policy that has come about. And I'd like to read to you the petition. To the school committee, we the undersigned teach at the high school, North Kingston High School. We're concerned with the school committee's proposed changes to a grading policy that was researched and drafted over several months by a collaborative team of multidisciplinary teachers and administrators at North Kingston High School. This team drafted a policy that was well-researched, fair, and consistent, and with policies from highly regarded schools across the nation. The guiding principles behind the grading committee's proposal included pursuance of ethical scholarship, responsible preparation for post-secondary education, and the development of personal accountability. We strongly support the work of our colleagues in their draft policy that states, quote, "No credit will be given for a formative or summative assignment when cheating or plagiarism has occurred," unquote. We respectfully ask the school committee and the community to support the grading policy put forth by the team of educators at North Kingston High School. And I would also ask if the school committee, subcommittee that's looked at our policy and made changes, sat down with us and had a discussion back and forth, and maybe we can come to some agreement before we go down a road with something that we can't fully support here at the high school. I also have for you, which I will give you this tonight, I also have the grading policies of CCRI, URI, RIC, and I would give you Brown's, but Brown's is 4 pages long, so I put the link. And that's 4 pages just on cheating and plagiarism, by the way. And I also have 3 school districts we heavily leaned on this cheating and plagiarism policy, one of which is Narragansett High School, zeros for cheating and plagiarism. Bronxville, New York, simply for the fact that I have a friend who lives there, and her husband's on the school committee, has been on the school committee, so I called and asked what their policy was. And also Westport, Connecticut, which is the 2013 Blue Ribbon High School in the country, the Staples High School. Also what I have included, which some of you may have not seen, is the draft policy that we drafted here at the high school. And I'd like to say that this work is going on here at the high school for a couple months, and we put a lot of time and effort into it, and we'd really like to have some discussion with you before we go forward with a possible change. I will tell you the main sticking point is that students may earn up to a 50 for when cheating or plagiarism has occurred. And that's really been the main sticking point for 108 teachers here in the building. And I'd like to give this to you and hopefully at least there's some discussion between us and you going down the road in the next couple of weeks or so. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person is Shelley McDonald, then Matt Leonard.
Good evening, everyone. Shelley McDonald, teacher at the high school. I'm here tonight. Well, I'm sure you all know why I'm here tonight. I wanted to express my disappointment in the school committee and in the administration for failure to communicate, for failure to answer my questions. I've asked many questions, and these questions seem like something that should be easily and readily answered by anyone who made the decision to put the wireless radiation into the high school, into all of the schools, actually. Now, I understand that the routers are in. I've seen them. They're not on. There is wireless radiation in the high school right now. There's actually a wireless router right next to my room, and I measure readings in my room every day, and I can tell you that they're quite high. They're much higher than I'm comfortable with, and when I went into the classroom to measure the router that is functioning all day, every day, it's 48 times higher than when I was standing across Route 1 from the cell tower with the 4G microwave radiation antennas. I think that's much too high for a classroom. I'm not sure how it's responsible to keep something like that in there. We wouldn't have a cell tower on the premises, or I hope we wouldn't. So I'm not sure why we would put something so much more powerful in the classroom. Now, this week what I got in my mailbox was, I guess I'm a little bit nervous tonight, was something for concussion awareness for teachers. And I think that's important. It tells teachers how concussions could affect learning, the cognitive, emotional, physical things, sleep things that we can expect of our students and that parents and teachers should be looking for. I strongly urge this committee and this administration to do the same thing with wireless radiation, because parents need to know what to look for. Teachers need to know what to look for. The cognitive and emotional and physical effects of concussions happen to be the same things that radiation sickness cause. Things from wireless routers, cell phones, cell antennas, things like that. Inability to concentrate, memory loss, difficulty handling stimulating classroom environments, irritability, headaches, dizziness, nausea, fatigue. There are others, but something like this could go a long way, and I would love the opportunity to make something like this up for the teachers, for the administration, and for the parents. And I'm not sure what's been going on in the way of parent communication and informed consent. As far as I can see, nothing, and I don't think anything has gone out to the teachers. I haven't seen anything. So I'm wondering when that's going to happen. I was so frustrated that I hadn't been getting my questions answered that I had to draft a Freedom of Information Act letter that I sent to Dr. Auger. So I'm hoping that that will get some of these questions answered, because there are things that we really need to know, the community needs to know, and we deserve to know. And that's all I have to say tonight. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge.
Thank you. Matt Leonard.
Matt Leonard, 71 Wampanoag Circle. I'm also your appointment on the audit committee. I wasn't able to come here when LGC&D did their presentation about a month ago. I served there with Bob. I was on that committee. So I did want to come back as your single appointment on that committee and just let you know that there was some findings, particularly on the town side, that has some concerns, and it could affect the school department. Particularly, I know there was a recommendation and an issue on the school department in reference to communication on the town. And it really shouldn't have been a surprise on the town side, because they did have some problems in the previous year's audits, and then they had a big turnover in the town side, and then they had people that left, that were out. In fact, when the audit firm came in to do the audit, they actually had to hire them to close the books before we could even do the audit. So there is some issues there, and they did find some material weaknesses. And I know that when the gentleman that came and spoke to you gave a lot of numbers, and that's what they had at the time. But it's important to get the management letter, to get some of their findings, and also to make sure if they're fixed. Unfortunately, we received this so late that we're, the 2014 year is about ready to end, and we're going to go through this again. So I would expect that even in this next audit that we'll go through, because it's closing within so many, less than 60 days, that there'll be some more issues. But we got to put some things in place, take a look at it, and see what, make sure that the following audit, that we can finally say, hey, we got no issues at all on town and school side. And I remember when I came last year, we actually had money missing from the town side that was stolen or lost or whatever, but it was school department money. So it does have a domino effect to the school department. And it's not an indictment on anyone's performance, but it's a matter of making sure we have everything in place. We pay these professionals, we have them come in to take a look at it, but do we actually take a look at their findings and then see, did we correct them?
Did you get the management letter?
Yes.
Are you going to write something to the school committee about some of your findings and what we should be doing?
It certainly wouldn't be my findings. It would be the audit.
I'm sorry, Mr. Leonard, did you say you have a management?
It's a letter from the audit firm listing their findings. So
we've never received that.
Okay.
It's not final yet.
It's not final. It's in draft formation.
Well, we can still get a copy of the draft, can't we?
Okay, why don't we make sure that we bring this up with the town council, and then we can get back to the committee on that.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes the citizens who signed up for citizens' comments. And that brings us to superintendent's report.
I'm all set for tonight. Thank you.
All right, and that brings us to the consent agenda. Are there items to exempt from the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
But I'd like to exempt C 1 through 7, please.
Okay. Mr. Biscarden?
He covered them all, so.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what did he, I did not hear what he exempted.
C1 through 7.
All of C? I have one.
All right, do I have a motion to,
I have another
Mrs. Avanzato?
D8, please.
Could you say that again?
D8, please.
Okay.
Mr. Viscardi, what was your exemption again?
I didn't, Mr. Mudge covered.
Is there anything else? Do I have a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those, motion passed. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, that brings us to C1. Mr. Mudge.
Yes. I'm a little baffled by this security assessment services. I was under the impression that we had, did we hire or somebody volunteered to give us an assessment earlier? And I'm not sure that I ever saw a report back to us. Was there a report? Well, first of all, did we hire somebody else to do a preliminary assessment here? Because it says in the back of material, I think that it's recommended we get a bigger firm to look into this thing. So my first question is, what was the result of the initial assessment?
We did have somebody who was coming in that we were working with. We had a couple of preliminary meetings. The price that this person was going to charge us was $2,500. It turned out that this person was not going to perform in a way that we felt was necessary in order to get this done, so we cut him loose.
So we didn't have a contract there?
No.
Okay. Well, following up on that, I'm a little concerned about the depth of this contract. It seems to me it implies we're going to do some design work. Am I incorrect there?
I'm not sure what you mean about design work. They're going to take our plans of each of our buildings, and they're going to indicate on those plans where we can improve security in various areas. I mean, if you want to call that design work, that's fine, but it's not architectural design work.
Okay, see, I'm just going to make sure I understand this. That, what we have here is that the end product of this is, I assume, a requirements document. In other words, they're going to bring, this firm will come in, bring their best expertise, look at our building, and recommend maybe a camera here, or a camera there, or an alarm here, alarm, maybe one on the football field, one in the parking lots, and things like that. So with that requirements document is and I noticed that they're going to follow the state security plan. But as a result of this, is it basically then going to give us a plan that then we can execute? We look at and execute, and that shows us where we're going to put cameras, the sensors and detectors, and communications and things like that.
Yes.
Why we should do it. That's the important thing. Why should we, put these, security devices at different areas and so forth?
And it's going to recommend a phased-in approach with some preliminary budgetary numbers so that we can choose what we go forward with first based upon their recommendation.
So basically, this is then going to give us a requirements document, if you may, that we should put out then for
RFPs, right.
Now, is there a
correct.
timeline for this?
No, there isn't really a timeline for this. We're not, the timeline, Mr. Mudge, is the actual security assessments and plans that we owe to RIDE, which is ancillary to this. So, we have requirements to RIDE in 2016 to have a overriding facility emergency response plan. And it's more than just lockdown drills and fire evacuations at the schools. It's really a very comprehensive district-wide plan. That's not what they're doing here. They are making recommendations for increased security that will help us with those plans, but they are not doing that plan.
Thank you. As part of this, then, are we saying are there going to be mandated things in the RIDE's assessment for their security that we have to do?
Only the plan at this time is all we're aware of.
Okay, because it seems to me, hope we're not in a situation where we're paying for this, okay? RIDE is certainly not going to give us any reimbursement for this, okay, because we're taking it out of our fund balance. So would this be a candidate for a reimbursement from the state?
I don't believe so, no. It's not construction or housing aid at this point. And
So we're not obligated to follow what RIDE really does then in terms of that?
only the assessments that are due in 2016, the actual overarching plan.
Oh, okay, so we have a schedule, a POAM with the state that we have to meet?
Yes, to August something, 2016, we're required to have security assessment and updated plans. Dr. Auger and I have been attending seminars, and we have an emergency response team that we're putting together. That's the only requirement from
So
RIDE
this
at
would be
point.
part of that submittal then?
No. It will help us
Yeah,
assess that plan, but this is not required as part of that plan.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Motion to approve this agenda item?
Second. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Buskard and then Mr. Jones.
What timeline have you placed on this project? I mean, how many weeks, months will this company be assessing our needs, and when is their deadline to have a report back to you?
We expect to have a report back from them in about 60 days. They
Is that-
just really need to go and they assess all the facilities, and then they'll report back and meet with us. So 60 to 90 days, it's not a very, very long time frame.
Well, I'm sorry, that's what you expect, but, I mean, when you put these things out, do you have a deadline attached to it?
Well, you know, I think one of the things also, too, is that it all depends on how they can get into our building. So probably most likely they're not going to be able to get into our building until school's out. So now you're talking another 4 or 5 weeks so that they can do a very in-depth analysis without people being around the buildings and whatnot. So that's really all going to depend upon that as well. So that's why I'm saying that 60 to 90-day time frame.
So from when school's out, that's when they're going to start their work?
Yes.
And at that point, so from that point on, what is the, I mean, do you have a firm deadline for them?
No,
Is there a reason why not?
because we're not really sure the depth of which they're going to need to do this. I mean, this isn't something that's going to take a year to do. They just need to get into the buildings, do their work, do their plans, and get it back to us. And then we meet and review it and present to you. So I fully expect that by the second meeting in August, the first meeting in September, their assessment and their plan will be ready for you to review.
Okay.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you. Yeah, I basically had the same point or questions that Mr. Biscard had. I'd add, in trying to read through all the fine print in the contract, if there was any specific concern you would have that there might be something that would come up potentially reasonably expected where the cost, there might be some extra cost beyond the 18.9.
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Mudge?
Yeah, who's going to be our key project manager to work with the group that's coming in to, become our in-house expert, if you may, that comes back to us and, tells us that, this meets our requirements. They've looked at the security plan, they've looked at the, the infrastructure itself, and so who's going to lead this for the school department?
Dr. Auger and I.
It's kind of looking like for really the worker bee who's going to do this.
There isn't anybody else.
The point of going to an assessment service like this, Bill, is that, it's very rare that a school department would have the expertise to do this kind of work. So
I agree.
So we need some experts to coach us on exactly what we should be looking for and the quality of the kinds of products that we should be looking to purchase and so on and so forth. So that's why we're doing it.
Well, I was wondering, for example, that, possibly, the town could assign, one of the police officers or something in the town, to be part of this, and, the fire chief or something like that.
There are lots of occasions, and possibly they may be included in items with the security group as well. I would imagine the group will be working closely with Steve Tremblay about buildings items. with Rich Booth about technology involved in these kinds of decisions. And there probably would be room for discussions with the police and fire department as well along the way.
Do we, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to this question, that's what I'm going to ask you. Do we have a kind of a security group for the school committee? That, for example, you know, maybe a school committee member and police chief and fire chief would assign somebody to, you know, to help with this process?
As we move further down the road, we will.
If you want.
Thank you.
Are there other questions from the committee? Yes, Mrs. Avanzado.
Well, I was just talking to Mr. Buskardin, and we were talking about getting information about this maybe over the summer, and I know Mrs. King always does keep us acquainted with what's going on with some of these projects over the summer if we request that. So I assume this will probably be happening over the summer. So if you could just let the committee know, you usually do anyway. So I would, we already have a motion on the table, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I would just request that we...
We'll make sure we give the committee information as soon as we have it available to us, as soon as it's ready to present.
Mr. Buskardin.
I'd like to, I don't know.
Amend the motion?
Well, yeah, I would like to know if anybody else in the committee is interested in having that company come and present their findings to us.
Certainly, I am.
I'm sure that they have no problem with that. They did say in that proposal that they're available for meetings, they're available for, you know, interactions with rides or whatnot.
Then can we?
Our intention.
I'm sorry?
That was our intention.
Okay. Can we put a time, can we put a point on it? Can we, like, the second meeting in September? I don't know what that date would be.
And the only thing that I would caution you is that this is probably an executive session item. We have to be very, very, very careful with the information that is presented about our security plans. They are no longer subject to public access. We knew that in the last ones that you approved. So this is something that we would have to look at and work with legal counsel on that, but I'm pretty sure it would be executive session.
Okay, that's fine, but can we still get put a date on it, or as far, you know, when they can? I don't know, when's their second meeting in September? Is that a fair enough
Why don't we
timeframe?
say that it would be no later than the 1st of October?
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Is everybody good with that?
All right, we have a motion on the table in a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to item C2, the approval of the chairlift maintenance services. Mr. Mudd, you had a question?
Yes. With respect to the elevator contracts.
This is the chairlift. This is not the
Excuse me, the
elevator.
chairlift. Actually, it's the chairlift and the next one, the elevator maintenance contract. I had asked for a list some time ago, you know, regarding all, you know, recurring maintenance items such as these, and I never really received a list of these. And I'm really concerned about that because we're getting near the end of the fiscal year, and obviously these contracts are going to be executed, I assume, in fiscal year 15, which is fine. But the reason I accepted these is just to make the point that I would still like to get a list of all such contracts. So, for example, I can't go in the budget and see $9,600 or $10,000 for elevator maintenance, routine maintenance, from Otis, or chairlift services for $8,000. I can't see that in the budget, and that concerns me. And we don't have a way to really track this thing. And I see the account, okay, but that doesn't tell me that, in the budget process that I can evaluate that as a requirement. So I would appreciate getting a list of all the contracts again, and, so we fully understand what all the contracts are going to be come, June 30th for the fiscal year 15. That's just.
This is a budgeted item, as it says here on our agenda.
This is all I have right now for bids and awards that are expiring June 30th, 2014. This is it. Everything that's on here tonight, I don't have anything else.
Do I have a motion to approve C2 and 3?
Second?
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. 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 All those opposed?
Aye.
Passes.
I would like to
Okay.
get a list of all these for everything.
That brings us to C4, approval of solid waste and recycles services.
Did you know it skips
Do I have a
3?
motion to approve C4?
So moved.
Oh, excuse me, C4?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Mudd, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I
You have
did,
a
I'm
motion?
sorry. I got distracted there for a minute. This waste haulers contract, now that is,
Trash.
that's the trash, when I looked at this bid, I didn't see that the bidder responded to the RFP completely, because as part of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the waste hauler, the trash, they were going to correct the trash, were to put a plan together to teach or do something for our maintenance staff. That was a part of the requirement.
For our what? Maintenance what?
Excuse me, our maintenance janitorial personnel. If you look at the contract, there's a provision.
That's for recycling, and they do that now. Waste haulers is our incumbent right now, and they work with GCA on recycling.
Yeah, but it was specifically in this particular, this contract, that it called out for them to present us with some sort of a plan to educate our staff. And I don't see that in there, yet one of the other contractors provided one. If you would have looked at the contract.
Don't we already have that on file, Ms. King?
Well, I can bring it up here, John, if I can find it here. But certainly, if you got your doohickey, you'll see that it's...
No, I mean, we have waste haulers planned for education and of...
These people were supposed to do it, believe it or not, which was kind of caught me...
Yeah, wait, you're talking about waste haulers?
Yeah.
The Waste Haulers LLC. They're currently our vendor, and they have the plan, we have a plan from them on file.
Yeah, but plan to them to teach our staff?
Yes.
Well, I didn't see that John, in their submittal there.
And they're working with GCA now, so that's all happening now, all of the recycling and all of the efforts that are especially here at the high school.
Could I just ask a simple question then? How much extra did it cost them to produce this plan, and then to train our staff?
That's not broken out like that. It's all in this price, $40,250 a year for the first year. It's not, there's no extra to this. It's all part of all of that.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Do I have any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we have the school committee approval of fast wastewater treatment services. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Mudge, you have further discussion?
Yeah, I'm kind of concerned about this particular fast contract after looking at it. Number one, the contractor was supposed to provide the chemicals, yet he didn't bid on that. And apparently, there was only one contractor that did bid on this thing. And I'm wondering why we're allowing the contract to be presented when they didn't comply with the bid, where it says the contractor will provide treatment chemicals proposed to sodium bicarbonate, school department, Department of Health if required. Okay, the contract will provide treated chemicals proposed sodium bicarbonate, wastewater, and must be certified by the state of Rhode Island. Well, they're not doing that. And I want to know why they're not doing that provision, and why didn't they bid on that?
I think you said it. It says if required. This company right now is the incumbent. There wasn't anybody else who bid. There isn't anybody else who's qualified to provide these services, and they've been a very good vendor, and we don't have any issue with them.
But why don't they provide the treatment chemicals as we said in here?
On that. Would we be charged, will we be charged?
If required. It says it right there in the bid, if it's required.
No.
And
It
that
Has
would all
additional charge, or it says,
There would be if it's required.
Well, we know it's required, okay, and that was when I said required, that wasn't referring to the, test and supply copies, okay, the test reports, which is separate.
But yeah, and that's if there are issues that are
if re-
identified and that have to be further corrected.
Yeah, and that's if required. But the provision, in fact, the letter that came here said there was an exception, that they didn't bid on the chemicals. So what kind of cost are we facing with regard to the chemicals?
I don't have that information in front of me, but it's currently what we're doing now. So, and you can't project if there are any issues in the future. You don't know if there are going to be any issues with the wastewater system.
That's separate, but I'm trying to understand is, we had a provision in here for the company that was going to do the service to provide the chemicals. And they did not bid, this bid does not include chemicals. So my question is, why not?
Okay, I don't have an answer for that. This is the company that we use right now. Yes or no?
All right, are there any further questions?
Also, so that this company, I noticed, does all the testing, and the one that was in place before, and...
Before this company? We've
Yeah.
had this company for quite some time.
Yeah,
I don't know who was before
this
them.
company's been here some time. But apparently, this company, we almost had a failure of our septic system during in August of this past year. And I'm wondering is, if they were coming in and doing all this testing and everything else, doing their job, why did we have an urgent problem to go out and spend
They're the ones who brought it to our attention that there was sediment in the system. They're the ones who found it through their testing and brought it to our attention.
I'll try to give you, it's a rather detailed explanation, but basically, they found an addition, they found that our septic system was a bit larger than we anticipated, than we knew about. A lot larger. And there were portions of it that we didn't know existed and we weren't maintaining, and they were the ones that uncovered it. And now the entire system is being maintained. So that alone is, that type of due diligence to me is worth the.
Mrs. Avanzado, you had a question?
yes, I have a question. I would agree with the comment that John just made in terms of, I don't think it was this company's fault by any means. It's probably the design of it. But I would ask that, is this a huge cost that we're looking at for the chemicals? Say they come in and say? Is it like 10 grand?
No, and I mean, it also all depends on if there are issues. I mean, you can't foresee issues, but as we go along,
But if we
routinely,
put
it's
out,
not.
if we required chemicals in the bid,
It's not.
I don't want to see a change order come in later for a large amount. Okay, that's all I want to make sure of. We've seen that, a long time ago, that used to happen. So I appreciate the question and the answer. Thank you very much.
Well,
All right,
I was under the impression, though, that,
You have a different question, Mr. Mudge?
it's regarding this, that, in fact, our maintenance department never was aware of this problem with the septic systems before.
No, they weren't. And when we got a new facilities supervisor on board, he worked with them and worked with Mr. Mumford, and all of this got straightened out and brought forward to the facilities subcommittee.
And thank you.
And we have a document that doesn't even show some of the tank, that didn't even show some of the tanks on there.
Well,
The way the job was done.
I'll make my comments on the next one, so.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 No.
All those opposed? Okay. Motion carries 6-1. Okay, award of the cesspool and septic services. We have Mr. Busgarden.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we take Ms. King's recommendation and award the contract to Mr. Mumford.
Second.
Mr. Mumford has been a very, very good steward to North Kingstown School District. He has helped us learn about our septic system and has brought things to light that we didn't know before he was involved. I think, and to boot, Mr. Mumford's a North Kingstown resident and a North Kingstown business. We have all the data required from him in our files. The competitive bidder, Wind River Environmental, at least as of yesterday, did not have a license to perform their duties in Rhode Island. It was not found on the RICRB. There's no record of them being able to do this in our great state. So with that, I would love to, everybody to approve this for Mr. Mumford.
Mr. Mudge?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions related to the contract. And I echo your comments, Mr. Scotton. I think Mr. Mumford has done a pretty good job over the years. However, I had probably been on his case a couple of times with certain things that have been done or not been done with the septic system. But I ask this question. I don't understand the, I guess it was $49,000 bid, and how Mr. Mumford, well, how we determine the gallons that we were going to be discharging, because the numbers don't seem to add up to me. If you look at our high school, you'll see that there's 225,000 gallons that's been bid for, okay? And yet, the tanks in there reflect that there are 4 tanks, 420,000 gallon tanks, which equates to 80,000 gallons. So my question is, are these tanks being pumped 4 times a year?
You're looking at the wrong information. The 420-gallon tanks are grease pumping. It's totally separate. In total, across the district, there's approximately 331,000 gallons that are pumped in a year, and that includes the grease.
I don't think I'm incorrect there.
Well, the RFP shows all of the information, the high school, the 225, it shows Davisville Middle School.
Yeah, now, if you look at the high school, Mrs. King, you'll say that the main system has 4 20,000-gallon tanks. I think that's right, Mr. Mumford, at a total of 80,000 gallons. So 80,000 into 225,000, is 3 times a year we're going to pump these? So that's my question. Are we pumping these?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. That is about, I believe that's about right. It's 3, and they're all different, how often they're pumped. So, the grease tanks, you don't know how often they're going to be pumped. We are assuming it's twice a year.
Could Mr. Mumford explain that to me?
No.
Well, the reason I asked that as well, as you know, some time ago I did some research in this, and in fact, with the fast septic tank, treatment tanks, I was wondering how many times a year they were being pumped. But that's very critical. And these were the tanks that were supposedly defective, that cost us, or people to say that we would, if we didn't pump the systems last year, it would cost us $2 to $3 million.
Madam Chair, point of order.
And
Yes, Mrs. Avanzato?
I just feel that we've gone beyond, the
I don't
rest of
think
it.
so, Linda.
Well,
I asked a simple question. How many times are we pumping these fast septic?
that was answered, though, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
I thought it was answered.
3 times a year.
Yeah, we have answered how many times it's been pumped per year.
No. The big ones are being pumped how many times? The 20,000 gallons? I'd like to come up with 225,000 gallons.
I can provide you with all of that information at a later time.
Well,
I'll give you the drawing, I'll tell you the tank number, I'll tell you how many times it's pumped per year.
Well,
in total, it's 331,000 gallons is the estimated pumping.
I guess more
it's an
importantly,
irrelevant question based on the need for this
Motion
contract.
to move the question.
Let me specify exactly what my question is. How many times a year?
You have a second.
How many times a
Right,
year
so I
do the
have a
fast
motion to move
septic
the
tanks
question.
required
I
to
need
be
take-
pumped?
The motion on the table is a motion to move the
Excuse me, there's a motion on the table.
There's a motion on the table to move
Like
the
to amend the
question.
motion?
You can't amend the motion to move the question. So, Lorraine, if you could take a roll call vote on motion to move the question.
Linda Avanzato.
Yes.
John Biscardin.
Yes.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
Cheryl Clarkin. Yes. Robert Jones.
Yes.
No.
William Mudge. Kimberly Page.
Yes. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
Like to amend the motion?
No, you can't. We have to vote on the motion that's already on the floor. A motion, and so Lorraine, could you take a roll call vote on
Ms. Garden?
D6?
Yes, approve, Mr. Mumford.
Larry Cerisi? Cheryl Clarkin?
Yes.
Robert Jones?
Yes.
William Mudge?
Yes, with the provision that I know how many times it's going to
Just
pump
yes
the
or no, Mr.
fast
Mudge?
septic tank. I don't want to, why can't we get that answer?
Listen, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to tell you.
I just wanted one
Okay.
question. I just wanted one
Lorraine is still
question
taking
asked.
the roll call, please.
Okay?
I didn't say anything.
Lorraine.
Linda,
It's funny. But you know, the fact of the matter is, these
Excuse
fast
me,
tanks are supposed
Lorraine
to
is
be
still
pumped
taking the roll
4
call.
times a
She
year.
needs to take the roll call for the motion.
They haven't.
So you please need to be quiet
That's
while
what
Mrs.
cost us this
Avanzato
big problem
records the
last year.
vote.
Okay?
Lorraine.
Because we weren't doing the
Yes.
maintenance, even after last year, we didn't maintain them.
You're out of order. Let the clerk take a roll call vote. Let the clerk.
All right, the motion has passed. That brings us on to C7.
You're the only truthful one up there. We know that. Thank you.
So we are now at C7.
That's right.
Do we have a discussion on C7, the backstop?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Questions? Questions? Mr. Jones?
Thank you. There's questions I asked Superintendent and the whole committee to hear. My concern I reiterated last time was, you know, when we start dipping into fund balance for all different kinds of stuff, I always feel that we should have a discussion of prioritization. So I asked the superintendent if he could tell the whole committee that I believe the project wouldn't start until all school activities are done. So what is the risk from any NKSD activities if we delay implementing this for a few months?
I don't believe there's a risk in this. You know, this was brought forward at the request of school committee members. We had this discussion back in the fall, and you know, I believe it's something that needs to be done. But given the time of year it is, I don't see any problem with waiting on the project till late summer.
Thank you, Dr. Auger. My concern is that, you know, like all these things, if there's no risk in waiting, that we should see based on other priorities that may or may not come up. And frankly, given the current bid for the item and the cost-benefit analysis, that I don't see the harm in waiting and having this discussion again in August when we have a clearer picture of FY15, and we can maybe just wedge this in FY15 funds and stop sort of kind of taking one-offs on our fund balance.
Mr. Busgarden?
I just have a question about the actual backstop, Mary. I'm going to test your knowledge on the backstops over at Woodford Middle, if I can.
It's going to be a I've already had a discussion with Mrs. King about her baseball/softball knowledge.
I saw
Now,
that. I saw that.
This is just real easy. Is this new backstop going to mirror the baseball backstop on the other end of that field? Will it be the same type of backstop?
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot more improved because it's going to have the canopy and everything.
Right.
All we really did on that other one, as I recall, was just repair some damage that was done to a storm. We just put up a,
Right, but I mean, but the one, the
Does that have a canopy?
it has a canopy, it has wings too. It's not just a straight backstop. It has two little outside of 45 to catch foul,
Oh yeah, no. Then I
So it's
believe
going to be,
it'll
I'm
the
just
same
curious,
thing.
it's going to be like
Yeah,
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not canopy.
And, there is no harm in waiting, but I would say that when you're done with FY14, if there's a surplus, that's going to flow the fund balance. So you're going to have the same answer. And the reason why we come to you with fund balance on these things is because they're technically not budgeted. And right here in FY14, we are running kind of tight. We were asked by one of the other members of the school committee to bring this forward, and that's what we're doing. I think that the price was a little surprising. I think it cost a little bit more than what we had originally thought it was going to cost. So that's why we did the formal bid and the formal RFPs. But, it's kind of the same answer. If you have $10,000 left at the end of FY14, it goes into your fund balance, and this comes out of your fund balance, you're kind of at a wash. Same answer.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Mrs. King, conceptually, and appreciate that we went through the effort to get the RFP. My point is always, there's always an opportunity cost to everything. We could sit there and go, what aren't we going to fund? If I had a marginal dollar, is this where I'd put it right now? And my answer would be maybe not, given the superintendent's point on the risk assessment. And, I just say conceptually, if there's 10,000 that's left over and we say this is where I put the marginal dollar in August, fine. But, if we're not using the fields over the summer, and if you choose for softball, so we're not going to use it at the start of the year, I would say there's $10,000 that we could put in a few other projects as well that we're just not putting up in this. And so I think as a committee, we sort of sit there and at least should weigh what the options are when we spend money out of fund balance. The security assessment, I get, we need to get that going if we're going to have a plan down the road, but, something that I think has no downside risk of waiting 2 months is something we could say, do we really have to do this right now out of fund balance?
I appreciate that too, Mr. Jones. The only other issue that I would bring up is that the summertime is kind of ideal to do these things because once we get into the school year, we get into testing. We're sort of the same thing with the tennis court removal. We had to really schedule that so that there wouldn't be any distraction at Wickford Middle School for the students while they were testing. So if this isn't something that you do over the summer, you push it too far, the next thing you know, March comes real early and they're back out there playing softball. So that's the only thing I would ask you to consider about that as well, is the timing of pushing anything out and if we have to push it further because of testing at Wickford.
Did they say, I'm sorry, how long the installation takes?
It's 3 days.
So we could have it on an August agenda when we have a little clearer picture of just what our funds are and approve it at that time, just to make sure that we know where we are at the end of the year. That I can't imagine the bid would change that much between now, May, and August.
I'm not sure about that. I would have to take another look at it, but usually they hold these for 30 days, so I'm not sure if I have to go back out to bid again or not.
Might send a signal to them if we delay.
What was that?
I said just might send a signal to them if we delay. That
they could send a signal back at $10,200.
Increase the price. What's the message? We have to get our act together.
Yeah, I still don't see that there'd be any problems with if we wanted to wait until August to revisit this again. That would still give us plenty of time before the softball season. And if it only takes 3 days, it would still give us plenty of time before the start of the school year, too.
Well, yeah, considering if you're looking at it in a vacuum and that wooden wire fence is sitting there waiting for us to give them the go-ahead.
Because your
they're
first meeting
booking
in
stuff
August.
out. I mean,
right. And your first meeting in August is, probably around the 10th or so. So then before school starts, you only have 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, just from a contractor standpoint, you're not sitting around waiting for somebody to come back at you. You're booking work.
And you're wrapping up your summer, and everybody's going crazy because, when the summer's over, the snow starts to fly.
Yep. So
I don't see the price going down either.
Never does.
No, I think we should just.
Mr. Mudge.
If we see it, we should go with it.
Is, as far as I'm concerned, this is another issue of the other 6 that we have up here that, we have, in terms of priorities, we have roughly $140,000 worth, $150,000 worth of basically new items on here, from 1 to 7.
No, they are not new items, Mr. Mudge. These are contracts that are expiring. The only new item on here is your security and this backstop. The other ones are not new items. That's a misleading comment.
You're absolutely correct, okay? I misstated what I wanted to say, is that I've asked for this list before, okay, of all these various items that need to be accomplished every year. So, we need to have, and I think Mr. Jones has said, there might be something else that comes up or something else comes up here. But we don't have a complete, or do not have complete visibility of all of these from a budget standpoint. You will not find a solid waste recovery contract cost in the budget. Okay, and we ought to be able to see these recurring costs.
Excuse me, I thought we were talking about a backstop.
Yeah,
Okay?
Mr. Cerisi, what's your point of order, Mr.
My
Cerisi?
point is that
No,
this is,
Mr.
again, a
Cerisi has a
reason
point of
to
order. Mr. Cerisi, what is your point of order?
The agenda item that we're discussing is a backstop. Now, off topic on the agenda item, Mr. Mudge is reiterating what he has previously said, and we are off topic on the agenda item. This is nothing more than a continued taking pop shots at the Director of Administration. That's all this is.
Yeah.
So I am saying, my point of order is we are off topic on this agenda item, and I am motioning to call the question, please.
Second.
Okay, so we have a
Again,
motion to call the
just to
question.
answer,
Lorraine,
just
would
to
you
answer
take the roll call
Mr.
vote?
May I answer Mr.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Linda Avanzado.
Yes.
John Biscardine.
Yes.
Motion passes, and this is on approval of C7, Cheryl Clarkin.
Sure.
Yes.
Approval of C7.
Yes. She said yes. You never called Bob.
Yeah, they did.
It's on the
She called
question.
everybody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Everybody the question.
This is now, we're on the
My fault.
next, we are calling the question.
Sorry.
This is to approve C7. Yes. Robert Jones.
No.
William Mudge.
No, not this time.
Kimberly Page.
No, I don't have any problems waiting.
Linda Avanzado.
Yes.
John Biscardine.
Yes.
Larry Cerisi.
No.
Motion fails 4-3.
Mr. Cerisi.
I just, I think our own fault process was a little bit flawed there. I would just make a motion, this motion failed to approve. I would just make a motion that we table this agenda item and revisit it, I believe, in August is what we discussed.
Second.
If we could have it on our agenda then.
All right, so we have this on our August. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. So this will be on their August agenda. I mean, if you could make that note so that we don't forget to put that on there at the first meeting in August. Thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of our, oh no, I'm sorry. We have item number
D8.
D8, leave of absence request. Mrs. Avanzado, you brought this up.
Yes. For those of us who have been on the committee for a long time, this has been a conversation we've had where we are trying to be consistent in how we handle requests such as these. In terms of leaving positions open, now, this is Mr. Ferrario, who I want to say congratulations to, and we are very excited about Stony Lane's achievement and his achievements, but I don't believe we grant, the only instance we've granted leaves of absence to administrators is first-time administrators, I think, that moved from teaching to administration and may decide to move back again. And in that case, I think there's a good reason to do that. I just feel we need to be consistent with these, so I can't support doing that right now.
Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to echo some of what Mrs. Avanzado said, that obviously, definitely no reflection on Ed. You know, he's an exemplary principal, to say the least, but having some fairness and consistency on how we apply these leave of absences. And, you know, we did support the request in the first year, and I could certainly understand the rationale for that, first year transitioning from a teacher to an administrator or principal. But now I believe we're like on our fourth year of approving this leave of absence. And I can't think of any case where we've done something of that nature in the past. And I think, you know, if you're going to continue that precedent for one, you got to continue it for all. And speaking with legal counsel on this matter, it's my understanding that even if the committee, and Ms. Carroll, you can correct me if I'm wrong, even if the committee does not approve this leave of absence, this individual, the school district, still has an obligation to create or provide a teaching position to this individual should they request to go back to teaching from the principal role. By awarding this continued leave of absence, what we're doing is guaranteeing that person that same classroom, same school, same everything, which I don't really think is fair,
Seniority.
you know. So,
We
there's-
don't do it for teachers.
so, am I correct on that?
Yeah,
My
Rhode Island
interpretation?
statute allows that any time a teacher in a district moves to a principal's level in a district, and either they decide or we decide, or for whatever reason, they go back, they have a right back to a teaching position, so this is really not even necessary.
Well,
If Mr. Ferrario decided next year he wanted to go back to a teaching position, we would have to guarantee him a teaching position in North Kingstown.
Right, but it's my understanding that Mr. Ferrario asked for this as kind of as a peace of mind, you know, so I'm kind of like, so none of our other principals ever request this at all, so if this gives Mr. Ferrario the peace of mind, he is the #1 principal in Rhode Island, I'm kind of like, I don't see that we're setting any precedent, nor do I see that we're doing anything harm.
I'm going to offer a motion to deny the request.
Yes, peace, I second that motion. I would think the peace of mind is tied into Rhode Island general law. That's his peace of mind. He has a legal stance through RIGO, so.
Question, please.
Mrs. Avanzato and then Mr. Mudge.
Issue. Again, I just want to repeat, nothing to do with the individual involved. It's a fairness issue.
Absolutely.
And as a committee, we have to treat individuals fairly. We're going to have people coming up in front of us saying, you gave it to that person.
Right.
Why not us?
Exactly.
We have to answer to that,
We've
so
had
I
this
don't feel
request.
comfortable with
We've
that.
had this request from several teachers who have looked for a sabbatical or to leave the district.
We
to
stopped doing that.
Pursue
Yep.
other opportunities, who have requested a leave of absence, and we've denied those requests. So again, it's, you know, it's a fairness issue.
Mr. Mudge.
I have a question for council. Is this a seniority issue? In other words, when a principal, for example, teaches for 50 years, okay? And I'm just using a rough number, and say they became a principal, you know, for 5 years, hypothetically. If they revert back to a teacher, do they carry just 50 years of seniority within the union? Is that an issue?
It's within the district, within the school system, they carry their seniority.
So it wouldn't be that if Mr. Ferrell went back then, that he would still carry his seniority, full seniority?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I'd have to check on that, but I believe so.
So there's no issue there that would harm him. And I
Guaranteed.
agree with,
He's a guaranteed position because he's a principal. If he were to notify the superintendent that he wanted to go back, there'd have to be a position for him.
so I support the, Mr. Reese's motion because, you know,
It's under statute, a principal has a right to a position. Yeah. But not his position, right, he wouldn't go back to his position, but he has a right to a teaching position. But I understand, but statute overrules contract, and the statute, we would have to get a position, we'd have to create a position for someone. Right, he would, you're right. Right,
But
so
he-
if he, right.
but he wouldn't lose school seniority within the school district.
This is, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Let's
so
have the questions here at the table here. Okay, Mr. Mudge, you
I
did further question
support
for
the
council?
motion by Mrs. Avanzado and Mr. Cerisi.
Are there any other statements, comments from committee members? Mr. Biscard?
Mr. Ferrari, just for my own learning the background, he was a teacher at the same school he is now principal at?
No, he was a longtime teacher at Forest Park Elementary, and a few years before he became principal at Stony Lane, he was a principal, I believe, in 4th grade at Hamilton Elementary.
So.
Teacher, teacher, yes.
So, all right. I mean, just from a management standpoint, you wouldn't want Mr. Ferrario to be a teacher at the same school he was formerly a principal at, because that would have a tendency to undermine the new principal's authority. So the fact that it's just a position that's in the district is probably the way to go.
But we don't have any say about that, I don't think.
All right, Mr.
I
Jones.
just have sort of a policy question. Is this general policy addressed in GCB or any other policy?
No, it is not. We don't have anybody else whoever asked
Well,
this
yeah, but
question.
I guess my point would be is I understand Mr. Treacy's point. If we're sort of creating precedents by action, that we should first maybe have the policy committee address this with the superintendent before we sort of set a precedent by our action first.
It becomes policy.
Which would sort of override policy.
Doesn't RGL override that, though?
Rhode Island General Laws is going to give him a job if he leaves the principalship. And that's going to be over your policy and over your contract.
Okay.
Are there any further comments? All right, so do we have a motion on the table? Okay, we have a motion on the table and a second. All those in favor?
The motion was
to deny.
To deny, so, okay, to deny the leave of absence. Thank you for that reminder. So all those in favor of denying the leave of absence, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. Okay, motion passes 6-1. Okay. That brings us to the end of the consent agenda and into unfinished business. And the first item is, yes, Mr. Treacy.
I'm sorry, I just want to back up for 1 second. And this is, when you get requests like this that are brought before the committee and recommended by the superintendent and is unanimously denied, to me, it's like, a light's got to go off there, I would hope. What more 6-1. What more protection or peace of mind would you need than having Rhode Island General Law state that the school district's required to provide you with a job? I mean, that's great. I mean, I think everybody out in the working world would love to have that kind of protection. And, the fact that we're doing this going on 4 or 5 years, I mean, when a teacher has come before this committee with this request, the recommendation has been no. So why are we going to hold a different standard?
What's your point of order?
Point of order is we've gone through this, and I understand what he's saying, but, it's been passed, it's been approved. I think we should move on to the next agenda item.
So, thank you, Mr. Mudge. So, I'm going to finish my comment in that this is...
Not going to recognize the point of order?
This is...
Yes, what's your point of order, Mr. Mudge?
That we move on, okay? We've already discussed this, a new agenda item.
We have already discussed it.
Yes.
I'm wrapping up my comment. Bill, you know what? You took the first hour of this meeting. We listened to you. If I take 2 minutes here, I'd appreciate that courtesy. Thank you.
Well, now you're talking about an individual.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge.
Okay,
No, I'm not talking about an individual. I'm
you
talking
are.
about a policy.
When you mentioned that he's nervous and stuff like that, that's...
Great, folks. We need to...
No, I'm going to finish my
Wrap
comments.
it up, Mr. Streetsy.
I'm
We
going to
need to
finish
move
my
on.
comments. If we're going to let Mr. Mudge speak for an hour, I'm going to take 2 minutes. We have had these requests come before us for teachers in the past, and the recommendation has been no. So again, I have an issue with our administration holding people to different standards. And I'm asking that they take that into consideration when they bring these recommendations before the committee in the future. That's the request that I'm making. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the policy.
You want to vote on that? Request, want to make a motion to make that request?
Not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda. We're not going to do anything more on that this time. We've gone through the agenda. We're on to unfinished business in the policies. All right. We have before us a revised grading policy, and that has been talked about in the policy committee. And I actually asked Mr. Kenworthy if he could talk about the how this policy was brought before us prior to coming to the school committee.
Yeah. Talk about the email you just sent in, just noticed, we put up here and speak on this.
Yeah, I did. Mr. Kenworthy, Dr. Kenworthy.
Good evening. Just a little about the process. As Mr. Avedian spoke to in public comment, the policy before you is revised language for a policy that already existed. Although the policy was only a few years old with a lot of changes to graduation requirements and other things happening, moving at a fast pace in this day and age. Coming into this school year, we had recognized a need to revise some of the language. So there was a process that was undertaken throughout the school year, and I did bring some suggested revisions forward to the policy subcommittee. With that being said, I let everybody know on staff here that once it got to that level, to the policy subcommittee, and then obviously to the full school committee, it would be your ultimate decision what to do with that information. And Mr. Avedisian earlier spoke to one section of that policy, in which he's correct that there's still a little bit of, I think, some disagreement with the overall teaching staff. But the other point that I would make is that that revised policy before you is 5 pages long, so a lot of information in there, and basically what we're talking about is we're down to one section, I guess. So, I just didn't want to discount a lot of the hard work and efforts on a lot of people's part that went into kind of bringing that policy forward to you like it is. That's all that I really have to say, unless there's any other questions for me.
Yeah, I have one question, please.
Oh, hold on. Mr. Buskard, your hand up.
Yes. I'm just curious, when somebody is caught cheating, plagiarism, a paper bought or secured over the internet by other means, when does somebody cheating get 50%? I mean, why does anybody deserve anything when they cheat? I am in full agreement with Mr. Avedisian on this. To give somebody partial credit for being a liar and a cheat is beyond me. I don't understand why that was even a consideration. I'm sorry, but I have to get this. I have to make my peace with this. For a child, for a student, for a young adult to be taught that it's okay, you'll get partial credit because you're a cheat and a liar is ridiculous. I think when you fail that assignment, teach them a lesson. This is not a lesson taught. This is a way of pushing people through the system, in my opinion. If you cheat and you write a paper and you plagiarize it, you fail that paper. No questions asked.
I don't think that was the thought in our policy meeting, that we did not want to give anybody a buy to say that it was okay to cheat.
The assistant principal of teaching and learning will determine how much credit, if any, the student will receive, not to exceed 50%.
Right. So that means that you could receive none, but it's to be the sort of thing of you could get.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, I had my hand up.
Excuse me. This is this is a school committee meeting. So far, we've heard from the high school principal. I'd like to hear from my committee members instead of deferring to the superintendent.
Thank you. I had my hand up.
I think it was important to hear about the discussion that went on in the policy committee, too, as to why this was reached.
Mr. Page, I had my hand up.
I'll be more than happy, Mr. Marsh, to let you speak.
My simple question to you, Mr. Kenworthy, is that what is your opinion about this particular comment? And I'm going to recommend we go back and postpone this for another meeting and to work this out. But
I would second that motion.
I'd like to know what your particular, take is on that particular concern of, a host of your teachers myself.
Sure.
I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot. If you want to go back and talk about it, fine,
I think even that language that's before you is representative of multiple drafts of language of trying to get, kind of almost a happy medium of I think that, there are going to be many cases that come up where it's a cut and dry, hey, this student cheated, or really it's plagiarism, I think, where there's a little bit more room for gray area, and just that, sometimes there needs to be in a final administrative decision. I think that's what that language that the policy subcommittee tried to get it to a certain place addressed.
You see, that's not that clear, but I understand that. For example, if you were to have a student that, it's over here, first day of school, and he cheats on a math test or something, he gets caught, he's cheating. Does that mean he can't get higher than a 50 for the rest of the year? Those are the types of things you come up with, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's the difficult part about being too specific sometimes
so,
in policy.
So
you try to
I would ask you to go back and
line.
kind of refine that to maybe, what your really intent is, and if it's on a date test, it's one thing, right? If it's on a test that includes like 1/3 of the score. So we ought to really readdress that, I think.
Good, Dr. Jay.
The rationale, previously as assistant superintendent, I was responsible for leading the team that put together the original policy on this, and this is the next stage of this policy.
How about if we, as a committee, take a 5-minute break? I'm sensing that would there be okay to be taking a 5-minute break?
Yes, one pertinent
No,
question.
if we, maybe after the subject, but let's not break the flow of this subject.
We don't have a...
As an assistant principal...
Mr. Jones, what did you have to say?
Well, maybe the superintendent can include this in his response, is approving this or not approving it tonight, the more question is, will not approving this tonight put any students or any requirement at the high school for this current academic year in jeopardy? In other words, are there requirements in here that were either mandated by the state or required for us to change in order for any graduation or other student requirement thing? Because I remember, like, the meeting before, we had to approve something to meet a deadline.
We can go to the next meeting, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Just to address Mr. Biscardin's concerns, and I totally understand your point, Mr. Biscardin, when you say, a cheater gets 50%. That is not the intention here. I've been an assistant principal for 9 years, and I've dealt with a number of students in terms of discipline at the high school level. And I disagree with saying that in any instance, under any circumstances, a student gets a 0 and there's no issue of any kind to change that. For the same reason I would be against a zero tolerance policy. There are lots of different versions of cheating, whether that be plagiarism, where a student may be savvy about the situation or not so savvy about it, to a situation where a student, going to temptation, looks over their shoulder on one particular day, and the teacher happens to see them, to a student who has just sold, stolen an exam off of a teacher's desk and sold it to half of the senior class. There are a lot of different versions of this, and they deserve different kinds of punishments. While I think that the punishment should be a significant one in all cases, I just don't always believe it needs to be a 0. And I believe we are here to teach the students a lesson about justice and about the ethics of cheating and all that, but I also believe that we need to teach them the curriculum. And so I think sometimes there's room for a student to say, listen, we're not going to give you a passing grade, but you need to do this work completely to passing level. You're not getting out of doing this. I've had a lot of students who like, thanks, I'll take the 0. That means I don't have to do it again. And I don't want to give the student that kind of an option. And I don't necessarily feel like if the student gets that 0 and their grade is, it's almost impossible to come back from that in the course of a semester or a year. For a moment of temptation, they may have just ruined a significant part of their life. And I don't necessarily feel that that is always just. So I think there's room, and I think in most cases it probably will be a 0, but I think that there is room for the discretion of an administrator who oversees this to make a decision about no more than 50% credit, for the reasons I just stated.
Mr. Cerisi.
But I'm happy to talk to high school faculty about that and bring this back at another point. I don't have any problem with meeting with more people on this.
I think it's a good idea, Doctor.
Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to make a brief comment. Federal and state level continue to increase the standards, or toughen up the standards. Why at the local level would we amend the policy to lessen the standards, or lessen the discipline for violating the
Lowering the
standards? Lowering the bar. And leaving a window of opportunity open for excuses. That's basically what we're doing. We are supposed to be preparing these students for college, or to enter the real working world. And to my knowledge, I don't know of a college. The college policy is you're expelled if you're caught plagiarizing or cheating. Now, I'm not suggesting we expel a student for plagiarizing or cheating, but I'm certainly suggesting they get a 0 on the assignment. Thank you.
Mrs. Avanzado.
First of all, a lot of people have been working on this for a good deal of time, and I appreciate the work that's gone into the policy. I taught for a very short period of time at New England Tech, a law class, and there were a lot of these concepts were discussed of remediation. They basically told the teachers, you have to find a way to get these, you have to help these kids through. It's not good enough for you to just say, nope, boom, goose egg, and then, you know, they're going to tank, and their prospects, their lives, and all of that are all tied up in that. I understand the concept, Dr. Roger, that you're talking about, and about having some flexibility. I don't really disagree with that. I do think, though, that usually it would be the teachers that would have the flexibility. I don't like to codify in a policy like this the way it's written. I know it's a difficult thing. How do you write something like that? And I realize, too, with the advent of the Internet and people using Internet sources, that sometimes they may be plagiarizing and there may be less awareness that it's cheating than there were at other times where they copy directly something. Different levels as far as footnotes, they fail to attribute it to the proper source. So I get the fact that there are somewhat shades of gray in this, but I think it needs more work in that. I feel like the way it's written here, just that one section, I don't like the fact that that the teachers don't have the discretion, which has been traditionally what's happened, like going back in time. I think teachers had that discretion. Doesn't mean they have to automatically fail a kid. If there are other circumstances, the teacher knows in the classroom. That's how it was when I was a kid. I mean, I don't know. And I'm sure that in some cases, the parents will bring these issues of grades to the administrators, and I do think the administrators do have the ability, and have had in the past anyway, to change something if they, I'm not really sure about that, but, so I guess I would say that I understand where this policy is trying to go and the concept of remediation, and not just taking a kid and saying, you cheated, you're done, you get a 0, and your whole year's done for. But I think it needs to be discretionary, and I really feel the teachers are the ones that have the best opportunity to practice the discretion. I don't know. That's my thought.
First, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. Mudge and then
I concur with that. We should, now to make a motion, we go back and postpone this thing and get this thing worked out. But Dr. Ogier, I do agree with you because, you know, kids can be stupid and do stupid things occasionally. But I also agree that there should be some recognition, as Mrs. Avanzano said, looking at everything and taking everything into perspective. You know, students' past, his problems and whatever. And, you know, I'd hate to see some, you know, kid really get screwed up because of this. But, you know, and I don't like the idea we have a 50 grade on anything there. But I'd almost like to see that taken out and then left to that discretion between the teacher and the administration myself on what the appropriate punishment would be. But that's what I would hope you would address when you look at this again.
Mr. Biscardi.
Thank you, Mr. Page. I didn't mean to demean the work that was put into this policy. I mean, I can tell you guys worked real hard on it, but I don't know where we got off. I hope I wasn't misunderstood where I thought that the person should fail the class. I think the person should fail that assignment. Not the class, but the assignment. So I don't want it to be misconstrued that I think unfootnoted or cheating or plagiarism means they failed that class, but that assignment. I just wanted to make that clear. And I would suggest that this issue gets tabled and maybe take the consideration of Mr. Avedisian, the suggestion he made about getting input from the teachers. I think you're spot on there, Dr. Ogier. I think it's important that you have buy-in from the teachers to get this thing so it gets implemented and followed in the appropriate manner. But again, I will reiterate, I don't understand why. Yes, maybe at the elementary school level, and certainly, and possibly the junior high school level, but come the high school level, I don't think that kids hand in papers cold. You know, they write a paper, they give your teachers have the opportunity. I'm sure the teachers give them an opportunity to look at it and to make suggestions. I know this is a few years ago now, but my daughter was here. That's what she took. She took every opportunity to submit her papers to her teachers and let them make suggestions on how to correct it. So the kids aren't handing papers in cold. If a teacher sees something that looks familiar, I'm sure the teacher would make the suggestion that, hey, maybe you missed a footnote here or something. But once the paper's handed in and submitted as their work, then I think it's all or nothing. You did it or you didn't do it. You got a B plus or a C, or you got nothing because you cheated.
So one of the things the committee should know is that Dr. Kenworthy presented this policy to the policy committee a little differently as what the teachers had already given to him. And then in our discussion in the policy committee, we looked at this, and this policy is only for the high school, okay? So we looked at this as, if you read here the consequences, it says that no credit will be given for a formative assignment when cheating has occurred. And it says, but the teacher may, for a summative assignment, the teacher will make a referral to the assistant principal, and then that committee is made up of the teacher, the student, a parent, the department chair, guidance counselor, and the assistant principal of teaching and learning. And what we discussed, so it's made up of a group that includes the teacher in that class as well as a student and a parent. And what we talked about was the reason that we liked that it could be possible that the student could get a 50%, which is still failing, okay? Because remember, 70 at the high school is passing. And it's failing by a significant amount, that it's not going to be just something you can just get a different test. But it could be up to a 50, okay? So that could be as low as a 0. But the 0 is almost impossible to dig your way out of. Because in your next test, if you get 100, you're still getting, it averages out to 250s, and you're still well below the 70 mark.
Well, I will ask a question. Whose fault is that?
And I'm not disagreeing with you, but what we were saying is that then in this forum of the assistant principal, the teacher, the student, the parent, the student would have the possibility, depending on the circumstances, of getting up to a 50. Like I said, still a very significant failure. And our feeling was that was something the student, depending on the circumstances, may be able to dig themselves out of if it was circumstances that were lenient. Obviously, if these were circumstances where it was very blatant, that sort of thing, you could go down to the 0. It would all depend on the circumstances. I think one of the things that we talked about in the policy committee, and not this specific, but to give you an example, there were school committees 2 years ago when weapons became an issue who banned all knives. No knives were allowed in. And so then you had the student who brought in the plastic fork, and they were suspended just like the student who had brought in a pocket knife. And then people were like, oh, everything went the other way. And that was what we were trying to get against. That we didn't want to make a blanket policy that said every student gets the 0. And that this allowed a committee of not only the teacher, who was there and knew the circumstances, but also the assistant principal, who could see how things were going in the school, as well as the student and the parent, to say these are the mitigating circumstances. So it would give the range of a 0 to a 50. And that's what we were trying to be, not the school committee who said everybody fails, that's at 0, but to give a ground that, depending on the circumstances, that you could say, well, this student could get a 30, this student could get the 40, or up to a 50. And so that was our thought, is depending on the circumstances. Like I said, it's still a failure, and it's still a significant failure below the 70. But that's what we thought of as a school committee. I have no problems with this going back to the teachers and speaking about that more, but I want you to know our thinking in that we didn't want to be the absolute school committee that said, no way, you get the 0 every single time. We wanted to look at the circumstances and allow that to be something that everyone could work out. Mrs. Avanzato, you had your hand up.
That was kind of what I said earlier is I think that happens in practice. I think teachers do take into account circumstances and do that. So I kind of agree with you. I don't think you put in a policy flat 0 no matter what, and that ties everybody's hands. But we can talk further about it.
Sure. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say there's been, good points brought up on both sides. I'm always concerned that contextually, all this assumes that, and again, while the majority is probably accurate, that every rubric is precisely understood, that every assignment is accurately laid out, that there's no sort of gray area where, and I'll just say this example that I saw at Bryant, where a calculator was used in the exam, but it wasn't made clear that you couldn't use a calculator like you can now that has a lot more capabilities than what someone used to think a calculator could do. And so was the student wrong? Well, no one said you couldn't use the calculator for any other reason other than what I assume the professor meant was to do basic calculations. So I'm always concerned that, that there's some kind of contextual way to do it, and maybe it's more appropriate, whether it's a committee, whether it's even more decentralized, where the default is 0, but there's some kind of process, because, as much as we want to foolproof most systems, there's always something that comes up that shows the counterexample. So I think, again, though, excellent points were brought up at both sides, so maybe there can be, an appropriate meeting at the right level to sort of talk about how, if any, kind of gets adjudicated that may be satisfactory to the folks who actually have to implement this.
Dr. Ajay.
Yeah, I appreciate all the comments, and we will certainly look at this some more. I just wanted to point out that, I see in almost any circumstances, policy or not, that teachers are going to have discretion on how this may play out to some extent. What I'm a little bit worried about, not that I distrust any teacher's discretion, but I see it playing out differently for different teachers. One teacher may feel like, sure, give you another try, and another teacher may be hardline, it's an absolute 0 no matter what. And they may both have very good points in the way they play this out, but when you think about that, sets up a situation where there's kind of an inherent fairness, depending on which teacher the kid happens to have for that class, may have a profound effect on how this decision goes. So no matter how this goes down, I would insist that there be some kind of committee like has been set up that's led by an administrator, just to kind of get some more input than one single person. And again, that's not to discredit my thinking about the judgment of any particular teacher. I just think naturally that kind of plays out differently with different people, and that could be a fairness issue when people may hear, well, something like that happened in the other algebra class down the hall, and that person got a 0, but over here they didn't, And so I think that a committee approach kind of sets it up to be more consistent.
All right, so do we have a motion to table this at this time?
Yes, I make the motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
We're going to go in the little room.
Are we going into the little room?
Should we go, can we go in here?
Right in there?
Yeah, or right in there.
Yeah, I think we're going back in there.